Hey, good morning, guys. It's Brenda Meller with Meller Marketing, and I want to invite you back for another Social Media Pie. This is my live interview series where I bring on inspiring people to inform and educate you. So I want to welcome my very special guest with me today, Katie Hodgkins of Brainspring. Hey, Katie, how are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
Good. It's nice to see you in person. It's been a little while since we saw each other in person in real life. I think it's been probably about a year and a half or maybe 2 years or so since we've seen each other here, right?
Yeah, that feels like a common sentiment you hear from most people these days. Maybe not a year and a half, but
it may not have been that long.
I've seen you in person.
Yeah, no, it's feel like in some aspects time has like stood still, and then in other aspects it's like, oh my gosh, that was like 3 lifetimes ago when we saw each other. But
yeah.
At any rate, I'm delighted to have you, Katie. And I want to just take a moment and invite any of our viewers that are watching us. We're actually live streaming on 3 networks right now. We're on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn, and we are on YouTube today as well. So if you're watching, guys, I would love it if you could please leave a comment below. And you can just say hello or hi. Or like what I do is I might say hi from Metro Detroit or hi from Michigan. Sometimes we have folks that are watching us from overseas as well. So you can tell us where in the world you're watching from or where in the household you're watching from. Because let's be honest, Katie, we're all working from home these days, right?
Yes, this is my living room.
I love it. And it's so beautiful in the background there. It looks like you've got, is that a stone fireplace that you're sitting in front of?
Yeah, we live in a really old house. Our house is over 100 years old. So this was something that an artist who used to live here created from field stones in our backyard.
Oh, that's so cool. It's a very natural looking, and it's very aesthetically pleasing on eye for the camera too. So very cool.
Perfect.
Yeah, there you go. Well, so guys, when I invited Katie on the show, I said, what do you want to talk about? And she said, and I said, anything that we can kind of wrap into current events and trends and things like that would be helpful. And she said, let's talk about teaching and professional development during a pandemic. What do the remote options look like? So before we jump into that conversation, Katie, why don't you take a few minutes, tell people a little bit about who you are, what you do, and a little bit about Brainspring as well.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me too, by the way. That was very nice of you to reach out. My name is Katie Hodgkins, and I used to be a special education teacher in the classroom for about 7 years. And actually my background is in deaf education.
Oh, wow.
So it's kind of interesting where I am now in terms of that. So I worked in the classroom for about 7 years, and then I had kids, you know, they grew up and everything, and I wanted to stay home for a little while. And I actually found Brainspring, and that's where I work now. And I started tutoring for them. And then it kind of snowballed into something bigger where they asked if I could do some instructing. And now I'm the director of instruction there. Okay. And what we do at Brainspring is provide professional development to teachers in training in our programs that are Orton Gillingham based. Okay. Which is interesting because it's a phonics program, but I had none of that when I first started because I use sign language. My students could not hear the sound. So It was a brand new learning experience for me when I started teaching. But then when I started working with the gamut of students, I just noticed what a big difference it made because I didn't learn that way. So, and that's, you know, not a huge background on me, but I'm not that interesting.
You are very interesting. Don't sell yourself short. I mean, coming from, you know, a teaching background and then you got life experience. I think, you know, we as women, we tend to downplay. And if there are any moms out there, working moms or stay-at-home moms, you know, leave a comment for Katie, because I feel the pressure too. It's like we feel like if we take a step back from work to care for our human beings that we are raising, you know, I mean, that's huge. I mean, you're making a huge difference in their lives. You've been a part of their education and teaching and learning. And now you can pull that life experience and combine that with your career into the job that you're doing today. So I think that's absolutely amazing. And I think there's nice threads within that story that help you to become uniquely qualified to do what you do today. Because you've been in those different perspectives, right? You've been in the teaching environment and the home environment, right?
Well, and what is interesting now, even more so, because your job while you're teaching at home and your kids doing remote learning or virtual learning, you're kind of thrown all of those jobs at once. And we're all in the same boat, which is kind of nice and comforting to know that, actually.
Yeah, right. We're not all there. It's not just some people. So what's interesting is now we're connecting the work at home or work from home moms and the work outside the home moms, because we're all, our parents, I should say, we're all doing the same thing. And no longer is it, well, mom's home with the kids and dad goes off to work. It's mom and dad are both home with the kids. And the kids know that the other parent is there now, so they're going to want to have interaction. And how do you get your workday done?
Right.
Which is a nice segue, Katie, into the topic. So when I asked you to talk about, what do you want to talk about? I said, pick any topic at all. And you said, let's talk about teaching and professional development during a pandemic. What do remote options look like? So tell me first, why did you choose this as a topic? Why is this important?
Well, it's not only important for me personally, because we're dealing with the situation at home. My husband is also a teacher. And so he's experiencing having to provide virtual classes for his students. And I got the better end of the deal because I'm in the living room and he's in our garage. So and it's sweltering outside, but it was his choice because he was trying to make it as engaging as possible. He has a giant whiteboard up in our garage in this big lab that's built. So he had the big space to do it. And then my kids are home doing this virtual learning, and the difference with virtual and remote learning, all of those terms. And then in my professional job, we had to transition really quick from doing in-person courses and then doing it over live stream is how we call it. So it's been a big transition for everybody. And so that's like, when you were trying to think of a topic to talk about, I'm like, well, that's kind of my life right now. So I thought, that's an easy topic to talk about.
And I mean, we're in kind of crazy times right now, and I'm sure you've heard concerns or challenges coming from people. So what are the common questions or challenges that you're hearing from both educators as well as parents about this time of remote learning? And we came out of the spring where we were all kind of like, do you remember March, Katie, how we were all like, oh, we're gonna be home for 3 weeks and it might be after spring break. We'll be coming back to school in April. And we were all like, okay, we'll just kind of hunker down. We can do it for 4 weeks. And then we realized at some point it was a school year. So we had to kind of live through that. And then, we took off for the summer, and now we're getting back into getting ready for the school year. So what are those questions or challenges you're hearing from both educators and parents at this point?
Yeah, I think from educators, and I know some amazing teachers, and they really want to be with their students, and it's a big change for them. And so, and then in my profession, I guess it's the same question of how do we keep it as engaging as possible to meet the needs of our students or the participants in our courses, because we don't want to lose any of the quality of what we're doing when we work with students or participants. So I think that is probably the biggest question I get is, how do we keep this? How do we do it over live stream? How do we keep it engaging? How do we get kids to interact and work with us and really like it still? So that's, I think, and it's a challenge. It's a transition everybody's had to deal with. And then even for the kids having to switch and say, okay, this is how we're going to do it. It's different, but you have to interact. You're not just watching something.
Right.
So I think that's the biggest questions so far that I get.
So what tips are you offering both parents and educators? How do you resolve those issues of engagement and keeping them engaged and keeping them focused and interested, right?
I just say, hang on tight. No.
Right.
I think the biggest thing is being resourceful. And like, I'll use my husband for an example, just because I can. And other teachers doing it too. They're using all kinds of platforms in order to give this information to their students. And there's some really interactive tools that they can use. Because like in the spring, we were just thrown into a situation where everybody just had to make do and with what they had, and everybody was doing the best they could. And now we can kind of prep and plan for that a little bit better.
Right.
So there have been some very inventive ways of keeping it engaging over like a live stream or I guess live stream or interactive, just like the way that we're talking too.
Right. Like a video. Right.
Yeah. And so doing kind of your homework on what's going to be the best fit for you and a platform that you're going to use to keep people as engaged as possible. Because what might work for elementary kids is not necessarily great for high school kids, which is not necessarily a perfect fit for adults either. So, so finding the right platform, I think, is key.
Yeah. And as you're talking about this, I'm even thinking about within my own household. I mean, we've got a 9-year-old daughter and a 15-year-old son. And I really feel for the parents with like kindergartners coming into the fall. You know, they're gonna have a different first day experience than we had. You know, dropping the kids off and picking them up at the end of the day. It's gonna be a much different experience. And we've been in the school system for a few years, so we are used to what does education feel like. Now my son, and we're in Fraser School, so my son got his notification the other day from the school. And whereas in the spring, you know, March, April, May, June, finishing off, it was kind of and help me with the terminology. It was remote learning, but it was like you watch it when you can watch it. Is it asynchronous or synchronous? I always forget the phrase there.
I don't know.
I don't remember. But it was like you watch it when you want to watch it. You complete the assignments when you want to complete them. And I think they still had requirements they had to reach in order to complete the school year, but they were a little bit more flexible because it's a very stressful time. And I know the superintendent and the school board was all involved in all those decisions, but it was a little bit of a looser structure. Coming into the fall, I mean, he got his schedule and it says, and he's in high school, and he got his schedule and it says, you know, 7:50 to 8:10 is your first class, and then you get a 5-minute break, and then he's like, wait a minute, they want me in front of my computer at 7:30 in the morning, and I said, but Joshua, like in last fall, you had to be at the bus stop at 7, so you don't have to be up and ready and dressed. You just have to be in front of your computer. So, you know, I guess leading to my next question is, what do remote options look like? I mean, what are you hearing and seeing right now that are out there? And, you know, how are we adjusting to this pandemic and still being able to deliver learning and teaching?
Yeah. So like I said before, there are so many really good platforms to use. And then I'm finding from district to district, what they call remote learning is different from virtual learning, or they have, like in the district that my kids go to, they have remote learning and then they have virtual learning. And they're
what does that mean? Remote versus virtual? What's the difference?
Yeah. So virtual is exactly what you were saying that your son Joshua was doing, where my kids will have a very set time, you know, 8:10 to this time, you're going to be doing math, and then, you know, a very specific schedule to follow. And then in remote learning, they do more of what he was doing in the spring. So doing assignments when you can get them done, fitting them in, they can grade them at a later time. It's just not live in the moment, but every district has been calling it something different. So that's I guess a general term for everybody to use, but that's just an example. It can be kind of confusing. So we did remote learning more in the spring, and then this fall they're doing virtual learning. So they're going to be like your son in front of a screen, and they have specific tasks to do in the moment.
Right. And I imagine, I mean, I think they're doing an orientation for my son's school this week, and hopefully all the parents watching this are, you know, reaching out. And if you're not communicating with your school yet, if you're not getting your newsletters and things like that, make sure you are. And I think we get like to the point where our kids get a little bit older. I'm like, well, he's 15. He could probably do it on his own. He could, but he probably won't unless I like tell him. And I've got another appointment at the same time as his orientation. So I just talked to my husband actually before jumping on the call. And I said, he's got his orientation Thursday at 11. You need to be on with him watching, because we want him to know what are the expectations and what are the penalties, right? We want him to be aware of all ends of the spectrum, because for us, this is different for all of us as parents, you know, as educators. And I feel for the people that are teachers and educators and superintendents. You're making really hard decisions right now, and you're trying to keep people safe, and it's challenging. There's no one right solution. I feel, I mean, it's like, what's the best? It's like as a parent, right? You know, as a parent, Katie, we're always making decisions on what is best for my child. and what's best for my children and my family may not be what's best for your children and your family, right?
Yeah. And I think that's the biggest takeaway, I think, from all of this that has happened is just give yourself some breathing room and some confidence that you're making the right choice, and the choice might not be the same as your neighbor, somebody else, but it's the right choice for your family. And give yourself some grace in this because it's new to everybody and you're doing the best that you can given the situation. And I kind of, I feel that way across the board, whether it's teachers making decisions, superintendents, companies, parents. I mean, it's not an ideal situation for anybody. So it's important to have some patience with it and give yourself a little break now and then to say, I'm doing the best that I can.
There you go. And we have to allow ourselves permission. And I think sometimes we have to like support other parents and families. And I always kind of look for the moms and parents of kids that are younger than me, because our kids are older, they're a little bit more independent, but I feel for my friends who have like daycare age children or babies, like they can't just my challenge is getting the kids off of the devices to get their schoolwork done. Whereas if you've got a little one, it's like, you got to keep them occupied. Yeah. So I want to shift gears a little bit and talk a little bit about, in the topic you have teaching and professional development. So I want to shift the conversation now to talk about professional development. So Katie, why do you think it's important for us to continually focus on professional development even during a pandemic? I mean, is this something we should wait on, or do you think we should continue focusing on this right now?
I still think it should be a focus. And of course, I would seem a little biased to that, but being from a teacher's perspective too, you never want to stop learning. But everything that you're doing, let's say for our courses, we're doing them through live stream and showing them ways that they can engage with their students because they're going to be doing it virtually with them. So gaining new perspective on that. And my other thought is, when will this be over? I don't want to wait too long to get that professional development in, because we just don't know when this will end and if it'll happen again. So I'm a firm believer in, being a lifelong learner and continuing that professional development. And it'll actually make the skills that you're learning in the moment, you can apply it to your classroom right now, because it's so important to make it as engaging as possible. Like for the little guys, like my son, he needs it to be, he was in kindergarten, he'll be in first grade, my youngest. And he needs that. He needs it to be fun and engaging. And how do we tell teachers and show teachers how to do that? And really being a part of that discussion with other teachers, because they're creative minds and they come up with the best ideas.
Yeah. Teachers are really, they're just amazing. And I know my kids have had such amazing teachers over the years. And you can always tell when a teacher loves their job, and some that are kind of, maybe now they're not, so much attuned, but the ones that love their jobs, I can tell they're just throwing so much creativity and innovation into their roles, and they're involving the kids. And I kind of feel like even my daughter's teacher from this past year, like I felt like she was one of her children. Like that's how close we felt with the teacher. And she would just bring such creativity and passion and enthusiasm into everything that she did. So I think, she's the kind of person, I don't know, but I think she's the kind of person who probably does invest in herself through professional development. So on that note, if there's people that are watching, Katie, and they're like, hey, I'm interested in professional development, and what do you offer through Brainspring? Who is it available to, and how can people learn more about those tools and services that you're offering?
Yeah, we do offer Orton Gillingham courses. We have two programs. So really it's K through 12. We have a K through 5 program that's called Phonics First, and you can do it over live stream. And, a lot of teachers who have been taking our courses, they'll say something like, I wasn't so sure about taking this course over live stream because it is so interactive, and it was actually a lot of fun. I really enjoyed myself. And that's our goal, because we don't want anybody sitting through that and feeling like they weren't engaged. So it's a big learning experience for us. So we have our K through 5 teachers who can take that. And then we also have 6 through 12, and we have a structures program that's intended for 6th through 12th grade. And then we offer workshops like phonological awareness and syllabication and Greek and Latin roots. So you don't have to take a 5-day long course if you're trying to fit in some professional development. We do have workshops in there as well. So it's really the gamut of K through 12, and depending on what your students need and how you want to implement it in the classroom. We do have administrators and speech and language pathologists, also, you know, just outside of the classroom, teachers who also take our courses. And when I say teachers, I also mean special education teachers, gendered teachers, and they can find out all of that information on our website at brainspring.com. And we have what's called open enrollment courses where we'll offer them, we'll put them on the calendar. And if they find one that's a good fit for them, they can sign up right there.
So can I, like, if I'm a teacher watching today and I'm interested in learning more, can I sign up as an individual, or does it have to be my whole district? Is the superintendent?
Yeah, you can sign up as an individual. And then you can even, we can work with you too if you wanted to invite more teachers from your district to come in and join. So it can be both. It can be a closed session where you just want teachers from your district and we can work with you on that. And then you can just come in and join our courses solo also. So
and I know your name is, I mean, we're in Metro Detroit, and I know your name is fairly well known here in the Metro Detroit market. Are you focused only on Michigan? Or are you nationwide, statewide? How far do you reach in terms of your audiences?
Yeah, we actually, and during this time, this has worked out well because our instructors who teach the courses haven't been able to travel as much. And so we are nationwide. We do a lot of work in the South, particularly right now. So with Alabama and Florida. We've also had participants from Texas and California, Tennessee. So it's really all over the place of where, you know, people are from, which is kind of nice. Given the moment, you can just hop in and join.
Yeah. And the good thing is you have a specialty in helping to educate the educator. So, you know, you've already got kind of a niche in terms of that category. What I'd like to do now, Katie, is we're going to move to audience Q&A. So you guys, if you're watching right now, whether you're watching on Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube, whether you're watching live or you might be watching the playback later, if you have any questions for Katie, you can just drop those in the comments below, and feel free to drop those up on screen. We'll try to get through, you know, your questions. If we don't have answers, we'll let you know and we'll point you into directions for resources. So here's one. I'm not sure, Katie, if you'll have the answer to this, but I'm kind of curious. And I'm seeing this whole conversation coming up right now about mental health of the nation, of, you know, our children, you know, our parents, everybody. I think we're challenged with this right now. And as a parent, I mean, I'm even challenged with, do I let my child have a play date at the park? You know, is that okay? But if I don't, how is that affecting her mentally and her well-being? So question coming from Mindy, and I'm not sure, Mindy, if you were a teacher. Mindy, are you a teacher? Can you comment below? But she's saying, how can we as educators, so I'm assuming she is in the teaching field, how can we as educators support the mental health of our students? So Katie, any thoughts on that, or resources, or, you know, where might you point Mindy on that one?
Yeah, so the teachers actually that worked with my kids last year, they did a really nice job and gave me some ideas that I'll share. But they would set up play groups for our kids. So if there were anyone that they wanted to connect with outside of the actual classroom, they would give us, you know, they would get our permission and we would get their phone number or their email address so that we could make small group sessions and they could just connect with one another when it's not structured classroom time. And then one of the other teachers also did, she did like fun Fridays, and they would do scavenger hunts, and she would drop things off at some of the kids' houses.
Oh, that's nice.
There was more connection, something actually substantial that they were holding on to. And she would also do pen pals. So not only were they doing it over Zoom, but they would include something in a little package that would say, this is what I created, and this is what I've been working on. So still making those connections with other kids. And I still think it's really important for educators' mental health too, to stay connected with other educators and be a part of those forums and have your Zoom cocktail hours.
Hey, there's nothing wrong. We all gotta have our vices.
No, right? No. Everybody has to. I think everybody's mental state and well-being is really important. So making sure they're still connecting to other students outside of a structured time.
Yeah. And I think it's just really interesting. You talked about the scavenger hunt. And if you're watching right now, if you have ideas for Mindy or, anything you want to add to the conversation, please feel free to add in your comments, and I'll try to pull your comments up on screen. When you mentioned scavenger hunt, you made me think about when my daughter, her birthday was during this pandemic, and we normally would have had some friends over or do something, and we couldn't. And it was, for us in Michigan, it was like at the height of everything. It was like there were no social play dates or anything at that point. So what I did is I created a little favor bag, which you would normally have at a party. And they had activities and games in them. And I stapled them shut, and I blew up a balloon, and I took them to, it was like 5 or 6 people that were in the party, but I took them to people's houses. We put them on the doorstep, and then I texted the parents and I said, have Ava go outside. There's a prize for her, but don't open it up. We did a Zoom party. I said, don't open it up until we start the party. And the very first thing, we had a bingo card, and there's a website where you can make this automated bingo. Everybody gets a different card. And I printed the bingo cards, and we played Charlotte's birthday bingo. And then inside the bag, there was and I said, okay, everybody grab out this thing. And then I told them what it was. And it was a lot of fun,
Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah. I might be stealing that.
Please feel free. And one piece of advice, if you do this, check and make sure you know where the kids live before you get started with the party. And I had one situation where the parents were divorced, and I thought they were at their mom's house, which is like 10 minutes from me. And they were actually at their dad's house, which was like 45 minutes away. So I'm like, I left like 3 hours before the party got started, and I didn't get back in time. So I had to start the party by phone and then, finish off in the house. But live and learn. But it was a great technique. Feel free to steal.
Yeah, that sounds great. I think just little things like something, where they can actually hold something and know that the other person, had given it to them. I think that's a really cool idea. And I think it's important. It's actually more meaningful to the kids too than you would think it would be, but it is.
It was fun. And I'm going to drop, and now that I'm mentioning this, I'm going to drop in the comments here. This is the website that I used, freebingocards.com/bingo card generator. There's a bunch of them out there, but if you guys are looking for ideas, we're talking about mental health of the kids. How do we keep this fun, interactive, and keep them connected with each other? And I do want to encourage you guys, if you do have any additional comments you'd like to offer, feel free to drop those in. Questions for Katie, you can drop those in as well. And I don't know if you saw, Mindy said she is in the education field, so she actually coaches tutors and administrators on their interaction with students. So any other advice for Mindy while she's on here for today, Katie?
No, I think that ideas that we mentioned are a great start. And actually, if you have other ideas, since you'll probably see a ton, but sharing those with other teachers and parents is such a great way, because not everybody's comfortable with being in person right now. I know there's nothing like being in person, but there are so many ways to stay connected. So sharing those ideas with others and teachers is really important.
Yeah. And Mindy also says they meet with families once a month to discuss their progress and take a temperature check. So thank you, Mindy, for sharing that. Great tip. And I think, I think about sometimes things that we do in the business world, how can we apply that to the world of education? So this is something, if you're doing team meetings with your team once a week, and there's 4 or 5 of you in, your professional life, also doing the one-on-one, like Mindy is suggesting, one-on-one with the family, so you can get that personal, individualized attention, I think can also be helpful. Yeah. So thank you guys for watching, and I'm still loading some comments. And I don't know if you saw as I was pulling them up here, Katie, but we have people from across the world that are watching, not just here in Metro Detroit, people like Monica, who's watching from Shelby Township, but we have, across the US, we have Arifa, who's joining us from Florida. We have Mohammed joining us from Dubai. I'm not sure what time of day is. I think, is it 12 hours ahead? I'm not sure, but I know it's we're reaching globally, different audiences on here. And then we've also got some folks that are closer to home. We've got some folks from Northville. Angela is on the west coast of the United States. So Seattle, I want to say 3 hours before. So is it 8:30 in the morning? Is that right? Think about my time zone calendar. And then we've got Pierre, who's on the other side of the pond, so to speak, watching us from London. So Welcome, and thank you so much for watching us, Pierre. All right, so as we start to kind of wrap the conversation here today, Katie, any final tips that you'd like to offer folks on this subject of teaching and professional development during a pandemic, on remote options, or any kind of final words of advice for us on the session here today?
I think the biggest takeaway is pick your platform and, be consistent with your schedule, whether it's remote or virtual, and give yourself some breathing room and give yourself a break, because we're all in the same boat. So reach out for resources and questions, and try to stay connected. So
awesome. And then any final shout outs you'd like to give? Anything coming up right now that you're working on at Brainspring that you'd like to promote, talk about, or,
always working on stuff at Brainspring. But we're updating a lot of our courses, and we're trying to make our live stream better and better each time. And we always have courses running, so they can always sign up on brainspring.com. And we are looking to launch a new podcast too, coming up in the next month. So that's a new venture that we're trying. And so all of that can be found on our website as well.
Okay, so I'm going to pull that back up again up on screen here, brainspring.com. And then, Katie, if people do want to connect with you on LinkedIn, I'm going to pop your LinkedIn URL, and then I'm going to show your profile up on screen here in just a second. I'm going to navigate to this in the background here. Are you open to new connections on LinkedIn, or only for people that you know, or what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm always looking to connect with more people, and it just gives us a broader range of resources for one another, because you just never know what a new connection could bring and what it can help in your own life. So connect with me. I would love that. And I'll be as helpful as possible, but chances are you'll be helping me.
Well, good to know. And I always encourage people, if you go to Katie's profile and you invite her to connect, make sure that you do include a personal note. Mention that you watched her on today's interview. And if there's any particular tips that she shared or insights that resonated with you, make a comment on that in your invitation. But at any rate, do give some context to that invitation. Tell Katie where you heard about her from. You watched her on LinkedIn Live today, and include that invitation. I always find that context, Katie, is really key to kind of getting that conversation started. And that way, if you have somebody who's send you an invitation, a lot of times we just get those blind invitations where we don't know who the person is, why they want to connect, and you're like, it's a big question mark. So that helps to kind of answer that there.
Yeah.
So Mindy, thank you, and all of you for comments. And I want to just echo what Mindy is saying here. Great workshop, great information that you shared with us here today, Katie. So thank you so much for sharing your time with us today.
Thank you for having me, and for everybody who joined, and I hope to connect with you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Katie. And I look forward to seeing you again in the future. And I'm excited to hear about your podcast. So when that launches, and make sure you post about it and share it on LinkedIn, and send me a message, because I'll help to give it a comment and jumpstart the engagement there. But I'm looking forward to hearing that, and I'll share it with my friends as well.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, guys. Well, thank you again, Katie, for watching, and thank you everyone for watching. And a reminder too, before you leave here today, I want to ask you for two things. First is, immediately after you leave the video, could you go back and click on the video and share it? So share it with somebody in your network who may be interested in this topic of training and professional development during a pandemic, whether they're parents, whether they're educators, whether they're tutors or others. Share this video with them. And then one other thing, if you could go to mellermarketing.com/subscribe, and you can sign up to join my VIP email list, where you get notifications about future LinkedIn Live videos, as well as LinkedIn strategy tips. So that's it for us today. So Katie, what's next on the agenda for you today?
Oh, I'm working on some course manual updates and about to drink a smoothie.
Excellent. What kind of smoothie? Green smoothie or fruity, or what kind of smoothie?
A fruity smoothie. It's my my lunch.
There you go. Very healthy. It's important to stay healthy, right?
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, thanks again for watching. And on that note, I hope everybody does stay safe and also stays healthy. Have a great week, and we'll see you guys online again soon. Take care.